There were moments on this cruise that had me questioning if I'd ever sail Norwegian Joy or any ship in the Norwegian fleet again. Going into the cruise, I expected smooth sailing, great food, top-notch entertainment. What I got was a mix of incredible moments, frustrating setbacks, and a few surprises I never saw coming. Now I'm laying it all out, the wins, the fails, and whether I'd recommend Norwegian Joy for your next vacation. But the very last thing I have to share caught me completely off guard, and it might be a deal breaker for you. So my wife and I, we got to sail on the Norwegian Joy recently. Now, it was my host travel agency's annual convention. So we went on the trip for the convention, but also because it was a cruise, but also because we hadn't been on a Norwegian cruise yet. We'd never sailed NCL before, so we wanted to check it out. I needed to experience it so I know how to advise my clients. So we were very excited for the trip. So let's talk about it. Embarkation experience. Smooth or chaotic? Yeah, the check-in process, unfortunately, it was long. I do not blame this on Norwegian, because I know Norwegian, they do set times for embarkation. Unfortunately, this trip, because I think it had to do with the way the charter of the ship was set up, designated embarkation times was not included in that for whatever reason. So it was literally a free-for-all. We got there, boarding started at 11. We got there at about 11:15, 11:30. And the line, it took us over an hour to get to the first station, which was where they check your ID against your boarding pass. Then it took us a half hour to get up the escalator to security. Get through security, it took us another half an hour to get through the line to actually check in. So boarding took over 2 hours. It was horrendous. It's the worst boarding in a decade. I don't blame the staff for this. The staff that I encountered throughout the process, they were efficient, they were smiling, they were friendly. Oh, and the other thing I forgot, once you get checked in and you're done, they give you a number for your boarding group. So after we waited 2 hours, we still had to wait another, granted, luckily this was only like 20 or 25 minutes, but we had to wait for our group to be called to be allowed on the ship. This is at 1:30. I was absolutely blown away. So yeah, that embarkation process was the least smooth, like I said, in a decade. First impressions of the ship, beautiful, clean. Public areas were gleaming. They were shiny. I did not notice rust. I didn't see anything that was broken. I did not see any split vinyl in any of the seats. She's definitely well maintained. Now I know she is, not the newest ship in the fleet, but if I remember correctly, she went through a retrofit or they upgraded her just 4 or 5 years ago, and she still looks beautiful. It's definitely a beautiful ship, well maintained. I had no issues with that. Navigating the ship, for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward design. It's not like some other ships that I've been on where you can't get to a certain restaurant on deck 4 just by going to deck 4. You have to go up and over or down and around. Now this one, it pretty much straightforward. Decks 6, 7, and 8 were where all the shops and restaurants and bars and lounges were. And then decks 16 and 17. 16 was the leader deck, the pool deck. And then 17, there was some other activity, like the racetrack was up there, the water slide was up there, things like that. There are a couple of restaurants like the barbecue restaurant and District Brew House. They seemed like they were kind of hidden because I think they were both on deck 8, and you have to go past the forward elevators till you get to the stairs, and then you take a hard left or a hard right, and they're kind of like back in there. So that took a little bit of time to find, but besides that, it was, everything's pretty much easy to find. Didn't have any major issues. Luggage delivery, I think we had our bags by 3:00. No worries there. That was fine. There was no damage. There was no missing things, no delayed items. We met our room attendant and his boss within 20 minutes of being in our room. They were both very professional. They're smiling, laughing, having a good time. One thing we noticed on this ship, it seemed like a majority of the crew were from the Philippine Islands. I don't have an issue with that. I actually like Philippine people. They're very friendly and outgoing. I'm just like other cruise lines, there's a mix of nationalities, a mix of where people are from, but it seemed like, I want to say 70+% of the crew that we engaged with were from the Philippines, which was cool. I actually learned a couple of phrases in Tagalog, but I'm not going to screw them up here. So the cabin, comfort, functionality. So we had a forward-facing ocean view room. First time we did that, I did that on purpose because I've heard good things and bad things about forward-facing cabins. I've heard that, on some ships, some people have had an issue where the room was always hot because the sun was beaming through the front windows all the time and you couldn't really shut the blinds. I did not find that to be the case at all. Yes, the sun was shining in when the blinds were open, but we only had them open when we were in the cabin. The rest of the time we just kept the blinds closed, and the blinds did overlap, so there was no sun when they were closed. I liked it because we had that sloped surface because we were at the front of the ship, and at the bottom of it went from obviously the top of the room down to maybe about 3 feet above the ground. And in that space, there were extra cabinets. So I had 4 cabinets that I put all of my clothes in. And then there was kind of arguably a seating area on top of it. So I felt this was a larger room. We were in 13102, so deck 13, room 102, if you want to try it out for yourself. But I think it was great. Shower was clean, bathroom was clean, bed was nice and comfortable. There was definitely plenty of storage, arguably the most storage I've ever seen in a non-suite stateroom on board a ship. Cleanliness, maintenance, in the cabin, no issues whatsoever. Air conditioning was great. Plumbing was great. No issues. All the lights worked. Everything was clean and shiny. Noise, privacy, no issues whatsoever because we were all the way at the front end of the ship. So literally you get off the elevator and you walk to the end of the hall and we were right there. Now, the only noise we heard was when we were pulling into and out of port, we heard, actually more like felt, the anchor being dropped and being raised. But that wasn't in the middle of the night, so it didn't bother us. It was during in the morning, like 8 o'clock-ish. So that was never an issue. Dining. Now, one of the things that honestly I was not really looking forward to was what do they call it? My time dining, anytime dining, flex dining. They don't have set dining room times. And I was arguably not really looking forward to that because if you watch my last video, I like early seating, 5:30 every night. Now, in this case, because of the convention, the travel agency convention, that worked out to our benefit because arguably we would have missed eating in the dining room all but one night if we had 5:30 dining because there were other activities. There were classes, there were cocktail hours, there were meet and greets going on that we would have missed our 5:30 dining slot. So it ended up working in our favor. The Joy had 3 main dining rooms. They had the Manhattan, which was the largest, the main one, and that was on 7. And then on 6, they had Taste and Savor. Same menus, just different locations. We ate in Manhattan once and Savor twice. Staff was very friendly, smiling. The food was very tasty. Portions were ample. Did not have a bad meal. I think one night I had the New York strip and had a little bit of gristle on it. That was my only real complaint. It was cooked perfectly. Nice Pittsburgh mid-rare, just the way I like it. The staff was good. The service was good. I would eat in any of the dining rooms. Again, no issues whatsoever. Other nights we ate in the local or the buffet. The local is kind of a casual. And the first day we had lunch in the American, I think it was called the American Diner. Just a diner. It's limited menu, burgers, sandwiches, that kind of thing. The local was their just kind of like pub food, a very similar menu to the diner. Burgers, fries, sandwiches, wings, that kind of thing. All in all, the food was good. It was not, the portions weren't too much. They weren't too small. I enjoyed the food. There was nothing to complain about. Specialty dining, we did not do any specialty dining on this ship whatsoever. It was only a 5-night cruise. And honestly, with all the different activities going on, we weren't able to truly sit and enjoy the main dining room experience like we do on other cruise lines, like on a normal cruise. So, honestly, when we were in the main dining rooms, I think we were in and out in 45 minutes kind of thing. Buffet was decent. We had breakfast there several times. We had dinner there, I believe, once, and lunch. Kind of limited selection, in my opinion. Ample selection that if you leave there hungry, it's your own fault, but not as, for breakfast. They arguably had 4 stations set up, and they were duplicates of each other. You know, they had the omelet station, and then on one side they had pancakes, French toast, sausage, bacon, biscuits, and gravy. On the other side, they had bread and fresh fruit. Take that same thing and repeat it 4 times. Now, because of that, the omelet stations never had a long line, which was cool, but there wasn't a whole lot of selection of foods. Same thing at arguably at lunch and dinner. You know, again, we didn't go hungry. The food was tasty. No real issues as far as availability of seating. It was de-embarkation or debarkation day. It was a little crowded in there, but we still found a seat within 2 or 3 minutes of looking. There was just a lot of people, as always, on any cruise ship on debarkation morning. Freshness-wise, everything seemed fresh. My wife got fruit at the buffet pretty much every day, and it was not old or stale. It was fresh. It was tasty. Cleanliness and service of the buffet, arguably one of the best I've seen. We never had an issue with tables being dirty, waiting for them to be cleaned. We never had an issue with, extra plates sitting on our table. The staff there was good. Entertainment and activities. Entertainment was, we only got a chance to really see arguably 2 shows. One was in the main theater, was called Elements, and it was kind of like Cirque du Soleil, sort of talking about the 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. We sat through about half of it, and it wasn't our thing, so we left. The other show that I saw was in the Cavern, which was designed as a Liverpool nightclub, and the Beatles were there. Not the real Beatles, but they had a Beatles band there, and they were good. They were talented. I enjoyed that show. The rest of the time, we were doing things with the convention, whether it be, you don't really care about that. So we didn't really get a chance. We did enjoy music in the atrium, a couple of different bands there, and in the comedy club, we went to the comedy show twice. She was funny. We didn't get to see the guy, but she was funny. So I would say there was something to do every night. Now, there weren't 8 things to do every hour of the night, but there were things to do. 2 or 3 different items. The performers in that Element show were all talented. It just wasn't our type of thing. Daytime activities, honestly, I don't know, because we were in training sessions or classes, whatever, all day, every day. So I didn't really see what was going on around the cruise ship. Now, honestly, there might not have been, because we chartered the entire ship and we were all in and out of classes all day. So we don't know. I don't know. Crowds and availability. No, not really. No. Crowds were not really an issue. In the classrooms, they would get overcrowded because, we're trying to hold the convention on a cruise ship. Cruise ships were not designed for conventions. So that got crowded, but that's not an NCL issue. That was our issue. Nothing we did needed a reservation, so I don't know how well that reservation process worked. The crew, the service, I would say good, if not really good. So somewhere in there, we found a couple of bartenders that we really liked, and we got to know them a little bit. And, the wait staff in the dining room, while we didn't get to know them very well because we had different ones every night that we were there, they were friendly. They knew the menu. They were helpful. Never had any issue with them. Our cabin steward, Punj. I know I have it written down. He was good. He was excellent. Never had an issue with the cabin being dirty. He was right there. They on this NCL ship, they had 2 little buttons just inside the door. One saying, do not disturb, and one saying, please make up the room. And, you hit whichever, when we were in the room, do not disturb. When we left the room, we would hit the other one, let him know that we were going to be out for a while so he could attend to the room. But yeah, he was very friendly, very attentive. We didn't really have any special requests we needed to ask him for, so I can't really rate that. But overall, yeah, all the staff, the dining staff, the room attendant, all the bartenders, all the crew, very helpful, friendly. I definitely did not have any service issues. Ports and excursions, we only did 2 ports on the trip. One was Cozumel, and the other one was Great Stirrup Cay, their private island. Cozumel, we didn't do any excursions. We literally got off the ship for an hour, walked around port, came back on board. Been there before. Not really a big fan of that port, so we didn't see any need to do much, and we also wanted to kind of have the ship to ourselves. In some ports, we do like to get back on the ship when it's nice and quiet and just relax in the pool and enjoy the peace and quiet, because, cruises are loud. We like a little bit of quiet. Great Stirrup Cay was absolutely gorgeous. Would definitely enjoy going back there. We did explore the island a bit, nowhere near as much as we could have, but got in the water and chilled out for a bit. I don't like tender ports, so that's the only downside. Great Stirrup Cay is a tender port, but honestly, it looked like they're building a pier there. So hopefully in the next year or so, it won't be a tender port anymore. To me, tender ports take away my time because you have to wait to, you have to get in line to get on a tender. Once you finally get the tender and you get on board, they have to wait till it's full. And then it takes 10, 15, 20 minutes for you to get there. And then it takes another 10 or 20 minutes for you and the 300 other people on the tender to get off and rinse and repeat the way back. So, yeah. Besides that, yeah, we enjoyed the ports. Great Stirrup Cay, obviously more than Cozumel. No logistical issues. Everything seemed to be fine. We got there on time. We left on time. The ship's amenities, everything seemed to be in proper working order. They actually, I noticed that they had, up on the pool deck, they had an adult-only pool, which is where I went. Now, it was interesting for two reasons. One, it was 6 feet, 10 inches deep across the entire pool. There was no shallow end. It was 6 feet, 10 inches, period, across now, granted, the whole pool wasn't maybe, but I don't know, 10 by 20. So it wasn't like a large pool. I was surprised at that universal depth. And the other thing, I noticed that they drained it multiple nights while we were at sea. And I don't know why. I meant to ask somebody, but I never got around to it. It was always crowded on the pool deck. It's a pool deck. I kind of expected it. Now, I will be honest with you. Both sea days, we did take a break around lunchtime to go up and go swim and get some sun for like an hour or so in between classes. And both times we found a chair unoccupied, unreserved in the first row right by the adult pool. Blew my mind because I've never seen that on any other cruise line. Usually, you're 8 rows back. But this one we found. Now, we didn't find 2 chairs next to each other. We only found 1, but we don't really lay out in the sun much. We're either in the pool or sitting on the edge of the pool the whole time. So that worked out fine for us. The spa and fitness area, didn't really go into it because that's kind of not my scene if you couldn't tell. Bars and lounges, plenty of bars around the ship, plenty of places to get drinks. They had a cigar bar, or not a cigar bar, they had a cigar lounge. There was no bar in it, but there was a waiter so you could get drinks if you were in there smoking a cigar. They had a whiskey lounge. They had plenty of bars and lounges throughout the ship. I never waited more than 2-3 minutes for a drink the entire trip. And, I enjoy my cocktails while I'm cruising. So I did find that 2, the whiskey bar and then the casino bar, or one of the casino bars, the side casino bar. Those 2 bars were the only places that I could get a good old fashioned. The rest of the ship, I got decent old fashions. But those 2 bars, they actually didn't use simple syrup. They muddled the orange and the cherry and made it to what to me is a proper old fashioned. And those guys got got extra tips because of me. So last but not least, at the beginning of the video, I told you about the deal breaker, that unexpected thing that almost made this a deal breaker for me. So now, honestly, most people are going to scoff at this and not really care. And I get it. Okay. But I was shocked at the size and number of smoking areas on this ship. Now, I am a smoker. I smoke cigarettes. My wife smokes cigarettes. The Norwegian Joy, they had 2 smoking areas. Now, according to the Google, they have 3, but we found out one of them no longer is a smoking area. So they have 2 smoking areas. One up on the pool deck, which pretty much every major cruise ship has a smoking area on the pool deck. The difference here was most cruise ships you go to, it's like an entire side of the ship on the pool, on the pool deck. There'll be, 20 tables or 30 tables with ashtrays on them, usually near a bar, and it'll be like the starboard side of the ship or the port side of the ship. Not on the Joy. On the Joy, the pool deck smoking area was a glass enclosed 10-foot by 20-foot area that had smoking poles in it and no seats. Well, at the beginning of the cruise, there were no seats. By the end of the cruise, people had brought 6 or 8 chairs in there so a couple people could sit down. Now, this glass enclosed, had a gap, the top foot of the glass had a gap and the bottom foot of the glass had a gap. But that was the smoking area. And initially that irritated me because that's not what I expect. What I expect is we go on a cruise, there's a bar, like in the mornings, we'll get up, we'll get a cup of coffee, we'll go up to the smoking deck, we'll sit and enjoy our coffee and, have a couple of cigarettes and wake up and enjoy the view and just be still. And then in the evenings, we'll get a cocktail from the bar, and then we'll go sit in the smoking area and kibitz and in between activities. Couldn't do that here. Now, the other smoking area on the ship, I'll get back to the pool deck one here in a minute, but I want to tell you about the other one. So the other smoking area was in the casino. Okay, pretty much everybody expects there to be a smoking area in the casino. Now, what I loved about this one, and I found it on Scarlet Lady by Virgin Voyages as well, a lot of the cruise ships these days they're taking rooms, other rooms, and making them non-smoking casinos. Okay, so the main casino arguably split down the middle. One side's smoking, one side's not, which I don't get because the smoke doesn't know it's not supposed to go in the non-smoking area. And I loved it because in there was about 50 slot machines, 5 table games. It was quiet. There was never more than 5 people, maybe 8 people in there. And because it wasn't busy, there were signs that said, you have to be gambling to be able to smoke in the smoking casino. I get it. They didn't care. Now, we did gamble. We like to gamble, but because there was not an issue with seats, they didn't care if we were smoking or not. So if we had 5 minutes between the time we were going from one to the other, and we wanted to just run in and have a quick smoke, instead of going up to 16, we could, and they didn't bust our chops. Okay. So I loved that aspect. I have no problem being in a separate room that's only for smoking, because I'll be honest with you, well, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, the pool deck smoking area irritated the heck out of me the first day. And honestly, I told my wife that I don't see us cruising Norwegian again if this is the way they treat smokers. But I changed my opinion over time because I realized that we weren't, for lack of a better way of saying it, wasting time smoking. Yes, we were having a cigarette, but we weren't sitting there for half an hour. We were getting in, we were taking 5 or 10 minutes, we're having our smoke, getting our fix, talking to a couple people, and 10, 15 minutes, boom, we're out of there, on to the next activity, on to the next class, on to the next meal, on to something else. I actually ended up really enjoying that. And the other thing that I loved was the lack of non-smoker idiots. And I apologize if you are one of these Karens, but on regular cruise ships where one side of the ship on the pool deck is a smoking area, every single day there will be multiple people who come walking through the smoking area doing what, oh, that smells so bad. Okay, I get it. You don't like the smell of smoke. You know what? Walk on the other side of the ship where nobody's smoking and you won't smell it. But no, they have to come walking through the smoking area to let all of us know that the smoking smells bad. So being in this glass enclosed space on the Joy didn't have any of that. There were, because the smell of smoke did leave that little room, but it was mostly contained, and the windows the ship windows were open in there, so the smell didn't, the smoke didn't go out onto the main pool deck as much. So initially, like I said, I thought this was going to be a deal breaker. Okay, that as a smoker, I didn't want to be put in this little room, blah, blah, blah. Turns out I liked it. And at some point, I know my wife and I are going to quit smoking, so then it becomes a non-issue. But some smokers are going to be very irritated by that and not want to go on the Joy. And I get that. Final verdict. Would you recommend